G'day, how you going, legends? I'm Luke, and this is the Aussie Filter.
Please adhere to YouTube selected guidelines before viewing the content of this video. I do not encourage or condone any products, actions, or behavior shown in this video. All videos are produced for a safe, professional, and controlled environment. Do not attempt to replicate any actions performed during this video. All actions are performed by professionals.
Something that's been playing on my mind a bit lately is the price of the almighty cigarette. Maybe I'll get in trouble for saying the almighty cigarette. That might be glamorizing smoking, I don't know. But pricing of cigarettes around the world. Here in Romania, I pay about €4 a packet, and they have packets of 20. I think that's pretty reasonable. I looked into it and I saw that in the US they're worth about $16.50, something like that dollars. And in the UK, oh no, that's my bad. In the UK they're worth about £16.50. In the US they're about $8. But the thing that got me thinking about this was a conversation that I was having with my dad. Now my dad's a non-smoker, and he just doesn't like smoking. But my mum smokes, and my dad goes and buys her cigarettes. So he's always complained about the price. And it's been about 6 years since I've lived in Australia. So back when I was living in Australia, I thought cigarette prices were a bit expensive. For what I smoked back there for a packet of 30s, I was paying about $1 a cigarette. They were about 30 bucks. Well, my dad was telling me now when he goes and buys mum a packet of cigarettes, it's like $70. Now, even if you do a comparison to either the euro, the pound, or the US dollar, that's still $30, £40, 38 euros. It's absolutely ridiculous. I remember seeing not that long ago commentary in the UK about them banning smoking inside pubs and outside in the beer gardens, and I covered that I talked about outside smoking for that video. I covered that topic in a video about smoking outside and non-smokers not liking it. But they're also going down the road of taxation to try and tax people out of smoking. Now, it hasn't worked in Australia. All it's done is really brought anger. People still smoke. And it's brought a lot of crime. The underground, what we call it, the underbelly, like the organised crime in Australia, like they've now moved into that cigarette market, because if you go to a tobacco shop to buy your cigarettes and you're paying $70 a packet, whew, you know, cost of living and all the other pressures that people feel, buying cigarettes is just difficult. So what happens when things become too expensive? They kind of go underground, and people will make that product a bit cheaper. Illegally, of course. And I saw so many news reports and about these underground tobacco spots or shops being blown up, people being unalived. Kind of have to use some terminology that that YouTube will expect or accept. And there's wars going on between gangs for the control of the market. And I saw a fairly prominent UK political leader talking about it, how what's happening in Australia will happen in the UK if the government goes on this banning and taxing and all kinds of ways to try and get people to stop smoking. Now, I'm not advocating for people to start smoking. I'm not advocating for people to stop smoking. You know, we're all in charge of our own lives. If we want to do it, we do it. I don't necessarily subscribe to cigarettes being bad. I sort of always go back to the thing of, I heard of a triathlete who ate healthy, never drank, never smoked, and still dropped dead at the age of 40 from a heart attack. Or somebody that also lived a very healthy life, still got cancer. Now, yeah, okay, different types of cancer. You might not get throat cancer, but it's a possibility. It just doesn't affect me. I kind of go with, you live your life how you live your life. If God forbid my time was up tomorrow, it's up tomorrow. I'm not going to cry about it. I'm not going to blame my lifestyle for it. It's just like, well, time was up, time was up. That's all there is to it. I'm more of that type of guy. But I do think that this taxation, tax to death, is it's just wrong. It's not going to work. I think they had a better successful campaign back in the late 80s or early 90s in Australia, where they really went down the death road with the Grim Reaper and all that, with the every cigarette is killing you. That was a very successful campaign. And then they went away from it and decided that, oh no, let's tax them. And I kind of think that's just a money revenue raising exercise. I don't think they really care too much about it, but they've seen a way where they can tax the living life out of people with cigarettes. And it's not just cigarettes, it's alcohol. I remember a time when you can get a carton of beer for like about $1 a beer, and now you're paying about 3 times as much. And that's getting it from the bottler. That's not going to the pub and getting a schooner or a nice cold one from the bar. That's your takeaways. That's unbelievable. And to me, it's an attack on the way of life. Like Aussies, you know, after a hard day's work, you go to the pub, you have a beer and a cigarette, have a bit of a chat with your mates, talk some shit. You'd have a few beers and a cigarette, and everything was good. But the way that the Australian government taxes the life out of it, most people can't afford to go to the pub. If they can't afford to go to the pub, they can't even afford to get a takeaway. They can't afford a packet of cigarettes. It's really just taken away that community togetherness, trying to, I guess, change the culture of Australia. It's just, for me, it's just not on. It's bullshit. But I know it's funny because whenever I speak to my dad, it's one of his major complaints. And I try to speak to my dad every couple of weeks, but he he always complains about mum smoking and how much it's costed him. He's like $70 a packet, and she smokes a packet every 2 days. Now I have to clarify, in Australia, which is something I haven't seen in any of my travels around the world, by the way. You get different size packets of cigarettes in Australia. You can get 20s, 25s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. Here in Europe, I've only ever seen packs of 20. I don't know about the States. I've never been to America. But here in Europe, I've only ever been able to get packs of 20. In Australia, if you got a pack of 20, it meant that you were poor. You couldn't afford a full packet of cigarettes. They were kind of like the baby cigarettes. If you only had, well, back in the day when I was there, like they were like $5. So if you only had $5, you go and get a pack of 20s and try and make them last until you got some more money to go and buy some cigarettes. But it's so funny, the over not really that much of a long time, like 2 decades, 20 years probably, cigarettes went from being around about $5 a packet all the way up to like $70 a packet. Now that's a fair increase in a reasonably short amount of time. And it accelerated in the last 5 or 6 years. Like I said, back when I lived in Australia, which was only 6 years ago, it was about $1 a cigarette. Now they're nearly $2 a cigarette. That's a fair increase. I just think it's bullshit. I think it's so wrong that the government taxes, because taxes isn't a health deterrent. It's just money grabbing. They tax you on absolutely everything. And they say that it's, oh, we don't want people to smoke, but they can't ban it because it's not illegal. So their next best option is to make it so expensive that people can't afford it. And as I said, then it just brings in the criminal element, because there's a market there to be filled, there's money to be made, and some people are going to work it out. They're going to find find a way that they can get into that market and make a lot of money, which then also takes away money from the government. So then the government keeps raising the taxes. And as I said, it's not just on cigarettes, it's on alcohol, it's on fuel, it's on just about everything that runs people, I guess. Yeah, I don't want to say that. That's probably not the right words, but they kind of taken the enjoyment out of Australian life, like not being able to afford to go and grab yourself a carton of beer and sit down and have a session and a packet and a cigarette at the same time. You know, I don't know where the fun in life is. They were the things that I absolutely loved doing. I remember every Saturday that I'd be off, because I used to work as a coal miner and I worked a roster. So I used to only get every second weekend off. And on those weekends off, you'd catch up with your mates. And what did you do? You went to the pub, you had a few bets, a few beers, watched some footy, and it might cost you $100 for the day. $50 to bet with, packet of cigarettes, and you could probably have about 10 beers, all with that $50. Shit, $50, you can't even walk outside your house anymore, let alone go to the pub. Kind of need a much higher wage. I kind of doubt it, even if I was still coal mining back in Australia, where I was earning a couple of $1,000s a week, if I'd still be able to go to the pub and do those things, Because what used to cost $100 probably now would cost $500, and that's that's getting a bit expensive. Nobody wants to go out and spend $500 and come home with a hangover, or wake up the next day with a hangover. But I like it here in Romania. €4 a packet of cigarettes. Very affordable. And that's here in Romania. If I go next door to our neighbours in Bulgaria, they're even a bit cheaper. And it's not that far away, especially coming from a place like Australia where I consider down the road is like just an hour's drive. And an hour's drive here, kind of on the border with Bulgaria anyway. So it's, for me, it's not that far. It's not that difficult to go there. But I haven't been to Bulgaria yet. If someone's going to Bulgaria and I know them, they're going to Bulgaria, get them to bring some cigarettes home for me. But what do you think? Cigarettes too expensive? Is the government trying to take away all the fun in life? Tell me your thoughts and opinions.